Well, it's hard to believe that my dad lived till 95 years old. And as many of you know, he went home to be with the Lord just this January. And my dad, he left some big shoes to fill, and my dad cast a big shadow, as those of you that knew him. And so we're trying to put a couple clips together if you didn't get to come to the service to honor my father. And it was a service that was really, it was honoring. It wasn't a sad time. My dad lived a good life. He lived, right to the end. He was witnessing to people and sharing the gospel. He lived a full life, but we certainly will miss him. I wanted to show you some of the clips from the service, and then maybe you'll take a look at it at some point if you have a few minutes. If you think about it, just think about it for a minute. Running a Bible conference is there's a bit to that, right? Because it's like being a part-time pastor of a church. Just like being a part-time or full-time running a hotel, operating a food service, a restaurant. It's like on Monday to Friday being a construction company. In the summertime, you have a start-up landscaping business. And in the time that you have left, you do some fundraising. So, most people, it would be quite a feat to be successful in one of those things. But running a Bible conference is quite a challenge. But God uniquely prepared my father for that. There was a street meeting, and my dad's life was changed. He realized that there was a difference between religion and relationship, and that you needed a relationship with God. And he was challenged there to read the Gospel of John. And he read it, and he read it, and he read it, and he read it, and he kept reading it. And if you ever heard my dad speak, probably 95% of the time, he spoke from the Gospel of John. Here's my point. Someone cared enough about a lost teenager to invest some time into them. And that's why he would load a car full of kids from Harvey Cedars and take them to a youth rally. And I believe that's why Harvey Cedars cares so much about teenagers. After college, he went to Faith Seminary. He graduated from Faith Seminary. And while he was there, he met Jack Murray, the founder of Harvey Cedars Bible Conference. And he followed him to Harvey Cedars. He was here for 3 summers. He worked here for 3 summers while he was in seminary. But his life changed again during a service. One of the summers that he was there, there was a speaker called George Smizer. He spoke on 2 Corinthians 5:14 and 15. And my dad's life changed. And from that point forward, he no longer lived for himself, but his purpose in life was to live for God. And that's what he did here. He ran the place for 45 years and retired in 1995. Although he never retired, he always had a pad of things that we should be doing. He was always telling people about God's love for them. Even in assisted living, he would tell me, he'd call me up 10 o'clock at night, by the way. 10 o'clock at night, he goes, John, he says, you gotta bring me some New Testaments, gotta bring me some Bibles. Don't bring the ones with the leather covers. Paper is fine. He said, paperback, that's fine. He said, but I was having a conversation with so-and-so, and he said, they need to read the Gospel of John. Right? My dad was always talking about God's love. Tony is the chairman of our board at Harvey Cedars Bible Conference, and Tony's been bringing kids to Harvey Cedars for many years, and now he's the senior pastor at LEFC at Lancaster. Tony has a passion for Harvey Cedars and what God does here, and so this is what Tony has to say about my dad.
We know that we're stewarding something. We're stewarding something greater than ourselves. The stewards will change, but the mission will not. The Word of God will not change. God will not change. God's heart for people will not change. God's heart for teenagers will not change. Those things are unchanging. The stewards will change, but the mission will not change because the gospel will always be necessary for those who are here on this earth. I stood many times then with Al in the back of that room. He's not connecting with some of the music of today's generation, but I would watch tears come to his eyes when students would give their lives to Christ. So while he loved the hymns, he appreciated that, we're here to win people through the gospel. And we will do so to whatever end we can, never forsaking the Word of God, never falling short on where the gospel lies, but always out of love for winning those who need Jesus. And so I know that while Al is no longer the steward here, we will walk in the similar shoes in stewarding the mission here. And I want you to be confident in that. We go forward.
The next speaker is going to be Charles Zimmerman. Charles has spoken here at Harvey Cedars for many years. My father and Charles were very good friends, always talking about things, always talking about the culture, talking about the church, where's the church going. My father was one that kind of introduced Charles to a number of other different places and Bible conferences to speak. And my dad was always so fond of Charles. Charles is probably one of the best communicators that I know that can understand the scriptures and communicate them across generations. And so this is what Charles had to say about my dad.
Al's God is a loving God. I often find that the sad reality is if non-Christians are just in touch with Christians, my guess is they wouldn't think that God's very loving if they look at how those Christians are treating him. Al wasn't like that. God's not like that. Al's God is a forgiving God, and since we have faults and God's forgiving, boy, that's kind of brings conception, right? Faults and flaws find forgiveness in God. Al's God's a healing God. That was in there. And I know it's weird at a memorial service to talk about healing. How do we know God's a healing God? Well, how does the story begin? He makes human beings healthy, wealthy, right? Why? How does the story end? Well, things are restored. They're healthy, wealthy, wise again. In the middle, Jesus shows up, and what's he doing? He's healing people and feeding people and restoring people. Yeah, we kind of messed up the deal, but the original intention, the ultimate destination is the same. Our God's a healing God. God is a sovereign God. I was a reformed guy, a reformed theologian. But he would accept anybody if he had the absolute right. Our God's a sovereign God. He establishes his throne, and he rules over all. I would be remiss if I didn't conclude by asking you Al's question. So do you know that God? Do you know that loving, healing, forgiving, gracious, sovereign God? Or do you just know about him? Al's whole life was dedicated not introducing people to theology or facts, introducing people to that God through Jesus Christ.
And God has told us that he loves us and he wants us to love him. And you do that by believing what he said and to decide to love him with all of your heart, your total emotional nature, to love him with your soul, with all your spiritual ability, to love him with all of your mind, your thinking process, and to love him with all of your strength, with your will, your determination. And when you do that, your life is transformed.
Hopefully this little video that we put together has been honoring to my father, like the service was. And if you get the chance and have nothing else to do, you may want to take it. It only takes an hour. We try to honor everybody's time to take a look at the service, honoring a life well lived. I think that it would be meaningful to you.